My name is Lee. My name is Lee Feliciano. I'm a partner at New Use Energy, and our guest today is Jamie Sweezy, who is with Footprint Project. I'll be introducing her more in a second. Um, I just want to kind of give you guys an overview of today's agenda. It's pretty simple. So I'll be taking about 5 minutes to introduce New Use Energy, and then I will hand it off to Jamie, who will, is our guest speaker, and will basically spend about 20 minutes outlining, their experience in Maui as well as their experience in general, and then we'll give you guys kind of 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. So New Use Energy is a company that supplies mobile and rapidly deployable solar battery systems. One thing that's different about New is it's focused on the commercial generator market. So there are an ever increasing number of consumer-oriented, more kind of small, more on the smaller side products, some of which are called solar generators. New is focused primarily on the commercial market. So our equipment tends to be a little more rugged and industrial, designed for regular use. The markets that we serve, not in any particular order, are telecoms and broadband, commercial remote power, right now mainly large-scale solar construction, which uses a lot of generators in solar construction. So we're trying to displace those. And then, of course, emergency management, which is why we're all here. And then lastly, this year, we've recently been making some good inroads into the film and events film production space. Emergency management and disaster relief is where we started. So I like to say that's in our DNA. And actually, Footprint Project is our original partner in the disaster relief space. So we kind of go back quite a ways. So I'm still trying to get used to how to advance these slides. Oh, there we go. So as I mentioned, we're in the solar generator business, and what we're trying to do is not necessarily tell you to get rid of your gas generator, but you can relegate it to a backup position, right? And the reason that we think that makes sense is, there are human elements. All of you who use generators to do your jobs, I think, are very familiar with these issues. But also, in addition to that, there's an economic incentive, right? In other words, depending on the use case, a solar generator actually can have an economic benefit compared to a gas generator. And this slide here kind of demonstrates the concept, right? Which is a solar generator, which is indicated by the gray line, is basically a little more expensive upfront to purchase. And then the reason that that line drops is because there is a tax credit in the United States. There's a tax credit or direct cash benefit associated with that, which we'll cover in a second. And then the red line is basically a regular gas generator, which costs less upfront. But of course, again, those of you who use generators know every single hour you operate that generator has a cost associated with it. Whereas the solar generator, which costs more upfront, has no operating costs, right? You pay for it once and that's it. So at some point, depending on your cost to operate that generator, based on a certain number of hours, you will essentially break even relative to the solar generator. And then when you use a gas generator beyond that, your cost is actually higher than that of a solar generator. One question we get asked to a lot is, well, what happens if there's no sun? You have a solar generator, right? And so we kind of turn that around a little bit and say, well, okay, so instead you want to use a gas generator, what happens if you have no gas, right? And the answer is nothing, right? Like you have no gas, you're out of luck. With a solar generator, you have a couple of different options. Obviously, the first is, using solar panels. And even on rainy or cloudy days, you'll generate power. You just need more solar. You can also add more battery capacity, or you could use a generator to actually charge up the battery, right? So the point we're trying to make here is you just have more options. And finally, this is the last slide before I switch over to Jamie. This is just kind of an overview of the types of equipment or products that News Energy provides, including to NGO partners like Footprint Project. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest presenter, Jamie Sweezy. I'm not going to read this bio, but you guys can read it. And I just want to say that I've known Jamie since she was working at the Minnesota State Legislature, and followed her path. And it's really cool to see what she's doing these days with her partner in crime, Will. And we're very pleased and proud to be able to call Footprint Project, one of our key partners, our strategic partners in the disaster relief and emergency management space. So Jamie, take it away.
Thanks so much, Lee. That was a great intro, and the feelings are very mutual. So first, I just kind of want to give a quick overview of who we are at Footprint Project and what we do. Then we'll talk about some case studies from Maui, and then touch on a few new initiatives that we've been working on at Footprint Project before we have time for a Q&A. So Footprint Project is a 501c3 disaster service organization. Our current focus is on deploying mobile solar generators for disaster relief and recovery, with the goal really to be offsetting or displacing the use of traditional gas and fossil fuel generators. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a slight technical difficulties there.
No worries. So our three core programs, the first and largest is disaster response. So we mobilize our fleet of mobile solar generators to provide energy as an emergency service. So we have our own fleet of mobile solar generators, which includes a lot of News Energy equipment, but we're technology agnostic. We will deploy anything that other than a single source fossil fuel generator. And as part of our disaster response program, we also assist other first responders in the field when it comes to finding and assessing sites. We like to say that we specialize in being the conduit between community needs and appropriate technology. And then in between disasters, we focus on training first responders and community groups on how to operate, maintain, and deploy solar generators. And then kind of lastly, our upcycle energy program is less of a program and more of something at this point that we just try to incorporate wherever appropriate, is incorporating second life solar equipment into our equipment, such as used solar panels, to keep them out of landfills. And then just to give y'all an idea of kind of the scope of our work, this is what we've done since 2018. We've been to over 20 disasters. Hurricane Ida was our largest disaster deployment before Maui, but now Maui has very quickly become our largest and longest disaster deployment ever. So that, of course, is what we're going to be talking about today. But you can go to the next slide, Lee. I want to back up for a second and just kind of outline what is a solar generator. You can go to the, sorry. And so we define a solar generator as a pre-wired set of electrical components that can get energy from the sun, store it in a battery bank, and then convert it into usable power. And that's kind of the analogy that we use, keeping with the traditional fossil fuel generator. Solar panels are the gas, batteries are the tank, and then the inverter is the engine. And when we talk about this, I think Lee sort of touched on this in the beginning, is that we like to think about solar generators as a new tool in your toolkit. Again, we're not necessarily, especially when it comes to emergency management, we're not advocating for throwing your gas generator in, in the dumpster, based on all of these things that Lee already touched on. And kind of the thing that I'd like to highlight, that Lee didn't, was that solar generators really allow you to expand and enhance the emergency services that you're able to provide. So whether that is being able to bring power to a site where, running a fuel supply chain would have been too difficult. We've worked with some volunteer firefighters up in very rural Northern California where it was not financially, logistically feasible to be bringing a gas generator to power something as simple and beneficial as Wi-Fi and communications, and they're now using a sun kit up there. And then the last piece is that I'd really like to challenge what folks in emergency management think as the role of that energy plays in disaster response, because right now the utility is both the energy provider and the disaster responder when the grid goes down. And I'm definitely biased, but I think that all emergency management departments could have a cache of solar battery generators that can help fill that gap. The last example before we get to Maui is the UMCOR, United Methodist Committee on Relief Disaster, their ERTs have been incorporating solar trailers into their operations. And in addition to using that power to supply power for the services they were already providing, like running their chainsaw teams, they've also started providing the plug as the service to communities when the power is out. So here's the first example of a use case from Maui. This was a group of community responders that were running a big supply hub in a very remote area. They were dealing with break-ins and theft. And I think this is a really good example of people often have way more power than they need. They had what they were using before was like a 3,000 watt gas generator, and all they needed to run was Wi-Fi and some security cameras. And so they're using this power pack there now. It indefinitely runs all of their equipment, and it's being run on an old 250 watt solar panel that's on the roof. So this was a preschool that burnt down in the fire, and they needed to move their operation to a super rural area. And so they, were using coolers for coolers with ice for food, because all they had was a gas generator. And so now they're using this. This is actually a SunKit 2000. It's an older version. Still working great for them. And then just one note on this one is I just talked to, that's Karen. I just talked to her yesterday, and she said due to the rainy season, they just moved the box inside, so that, of course, is another added benefit of solar generators, is that you can bring them inside for use. This is the Maui County Fire Department. So we met with them kind of after all of the immediate response, our rapid response efforts were kind of winding down. And this is a sun kit, a News 50/50 sun kit that they are planning on installing in their ocean safety lifeguard shipping container office. They are really just running, daytime air conditioning and radios and Wi-Fi. And so it's just to be transparent, this one is going to be installed, I think, within the next couple of months, once they get that shipping container ready for deployment. And then I just want to hit on this pretty quickly, because it's a very, Lee and I talked about this. This is not, new use equipment, but I just wanted to kind of highlight the other end of the very wide range of spectrum of what solar energy can do for, you know, particularly long-term operations. This is the biggest solar microgrid that we have ever installed. As you can see, it's, you know, takes up over 2 shipping containers of solar panels on the roof, but this operation is going to be around for at least 2 years. And they were running a large, you can see that Matson big 3-phase reefer trailer. And for something that's going to be around for the long haul, it is possible to take that operation completely off gas and diesel as well. So I just want to touch on a couple new initiatives that Footprint Project is working on. This is a really good example of providing energy as a service as an emergency responder. So this was after a tornado in New Orleans. I think the grid was only down for like 3 or 4 days. But what we did was you can see the trailer in the background there. And that's a solar trailer. And we just went out and bought a bunch of small cell phone batteries. And then we also had in the foreground there, you can see a larger new use energy battery, and then a medium-sized one, the silver brick. And those two both have regular, 120 outlet plugs. And we sent out a text message to the zip code that was out of power, and folks could line up and check out a battery to bring home with them. They let them know what their needs were. Some folks might have had something like a nebulizer that would need a larger battery, and some folks just needed something to keep their cell phone charged. And then the next day they would come back, or whenever it died, and check a new one out until the power came back on. This is a brand new trailer that we actually just finished, and this is sort of something that Footprint Project is trying to get a little bit more into, which is, providing not just the plug, but providing the infrastructure. So this is a refrigerated trailer that is completely powered by, you can see on the front there, there's a sun kit that we are using to power this insulated refrigerator trailer that has a CoolBot technology that allows that regular window air conditioner, which is a 120. It kind of tricks the insides of the air conditioner to go below 50 degrees, so it can cool down that refrigerator to the right temperature. And then lastly, we have also been working on some atmospheric water generation paired with solar and storage. The one on the right is a very large unit that we deployed on Maui. And so what this does is it basically takes the humidity from the air, turns it into potable water by running it through a filtration system. And so the one on the left is a smaller version that we have also used to power or powered with a sun kit. And then, I think Lee touched on this in the beginning with that chart. Footprint Project has really taken advantage of the IRA, which gives direct tax credit cash payments back for anything above 5 kilowatt hours for renewable energy systems. And we're going to be taking advantage of it this year. That's something that to go into a lot of details about, I think Lee might have some insight, or, Footprint Project consulted our tax professionals.
Yeah, we can respond to that. I don't want to get in the middle of your presentation, but we can talk about that during the Q&A.
Yep.
If questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee. And then, just to wrap up here, I think I'm probably preaching to the choir here with who I see is on this call, but, disasters are complex, and we think that the way that we respond to them should be multifaceted as well. Again, the more tools we have in our toolkits, the better in terms of resiliency. And then lastly, I hope that I shared a glimpse of today that solar generators can do, so much more than just displacing or offsetting the use of what your current gas or fossil fuel generator can do. I think that's also the opportunity. It's also a challenge because it's like, where do the opportunities are so large that it might feel paralyzing on where to start. But yeah, I hope I've given y'all a few nuggets of bite-sized wisdom of where you can start, because the possibilities are really endless when it comes to incorporating solar generators into your emergency management plans. So yeah, thanks for having me today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks very much, Jamie. That was great. And yeah, this is the first time I've really kind of gotten a glimpse into the details of what you guys did in Maui. I know there's a lot more to it than what was on here, but that's super cool. And so I will open up the session to anyone who has any questions. So I don't see anyone so far, but let me start, I guess, by and I guess this is kind of a question for both of us, Jamie, but from a budget standpoint, how do you allocate for solar generators if you're like an emergency manager that maybe already has a gas generator? Maybe what's one way to go about obtaining a solar generator?
Yeah, so there are a wide variety of solar generators out there. I said in the beginning, what our kind of definition is that pre-wired set of components. There's lots of stuff that's on the shelf. These days I think it's really awesome that you can go to just Home Depot and buy something like a Jackery. What I really love about new use equipment is that you can use any commercial solar panel to integrate with the system. I like to think of new use equipment as kind of, the Linux version, where you are able to change components out if needed, add batteries to the system, kind of make it customizable for what your needs are. Because like I said, disasters are so complex, and I think the new use products really kind of they reflect the complexity of what disaster response needs.
Thanks, Jamie. And the one thing I want to quickly add is to a very large extent, the reason new use is in this business is the feedback we got from the folks over at Footprint Project, who have a lot of experience using, as you guys can see, just about everything they can get their hands on, including some of those consumer products. And as I alluded to earlier, what we've tried to do is kind of take that to the next step, because consumer products are typically designed for occasional use. And when a disaster hits, you have to use that device or that piece of equipment constantly. And consumer products don't always stand up to that type of constant use. So I do have a question here about the battery. So it's from Sharon, who asks, how long will the battery hold its charge if it's not in use? And I guess I'll take that first. Jamie, if you have anything to add, please do. But so Sharon, so it depends on the battery and it depends on the system, right? Lithium iron phosphate battery, which is what New Use Energy uses. Typically, if they're properly stored and the equipment allows you to basically shut off your system so there are no phantom loads, you can have that battery sit there for 6 months to a year easily, and it might lose 10% of the charge but it will not drain completely. So that's another benefit in terms of storage, because I know with generators, you have to fire them up, once a month if you want to make sure that they'll work when you need them. With a lithium iron phosphate battery, you can just keep it and not think about it for half a year, and then fire it up, and you'll still have most of your charge. I don't know, Jamie, if you have anything to add to that from your experience.
No, I don't have anything to add. I was gonna throw that one over to you.
Okay. And I've got another question here. What do you plan to do with your systems when they're no longer in daily use? And when might that be? So I think, Jamie, that one is directed at you.
Yeah, that is a great question. So, we actually have the ones on Maui. Our plan for actually some of the sun kits that have been in daily use is to rent them out to folks who are doing long-term recovery. So there are many folks who are building kind of tiny home projects for the community. We have one small business owner who lost his whole, total everything in the fire and now has to start from square one. And so he has a little off-grid site. It's actually a surfboard shaping business. And so what our plan is, all of those folks are planning on using gas and diesel generators, and what we have kind of in our next plan, long-term recovery plan, is to utilize the equipment that was used for rapid response and rent it out to any folks who are doing these long-term recovery projects for a fraction of the cost that they would have otherwise been spending renting a gas generator or on their gas and diesel supply chain. Because, unlike a gas or diesel generator, this stuff, when it's just sitting there, it's producing free electrons, and the more that they can be utilized, the better.
Great. And I think we're just past the half-hour mark. I have something here, but I think it's more of a comment, a compliment than a question. So thank you. And just FYI, if you know anyone else that might benefit or might be interested in this webinar, it has been recorded and it will be available through a link on the New Use Energy website. So newuseenergy.com. The webinar will be available for future viewing. So thanks very much, everyone, for attending. Jamie, thanks again so much for all the work you do. And we look forward to continuing the cooperation in 2024.
Yeah, same. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a good one, guys.